What's going on, guys? Joshua here. So in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about personal finance, and we're going to go over pretty much everything that there is to know, at least all of the important things that there is to know about personal finance. My goal by the end of this video, if you actually watch all the way through and you engage with the content and you take notes maybe, my goal is to have you walk away with more knowledge about personal finance than 99% of people out there. You should be able to walk away from this video and go out into your life and start making significantly better decisions around your finances, which will in turn create that financial independence that you're looking for, right? If you actually stay consistent with the methods that I'm going to teach you in this video, then it will have a massive impact on your financial life. You know, I've never met a single person in my life who said to me, Joshua, I hate being financially free. In fact, I love living paycheck to paycheck and never having enough to make ends meet. That's the life that I love. I want to do this the rest of my life. I've never met anybody like that. And if you know somebody like that, then I would encourage you to create as much distance between you and that person as possible, because that person is inevitably going to drag you down if you're hanging around them long enough, okay? Most of us want to be successful, and most of us want to be financially independent. However, the biggest thing that is usually holding you back is just a lack of understanding of the basics, right? Sometimes the basics are the most powerful part of knowing something. And in the case of personal finance, that's true. If you can just understand the basics of how to manage your money, of how to properly save, how to properly invest your money, how to actually budget the right way. And so I'm going to teach you everything I know, because the stuff that I'm going to teach you has worked in my life. And I know that it's going to work in your life as well if you actually stick around and watch and you take what I'm saying seriously, okay? With that being said, let's go ahead and jump in here. If you could do me a huge favor, go ahead and drop a like down below really quick and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. I would appreciate that so much. So the first thing that I actually want to talk to you about today is saving money. Saving money is probably the most important part of your personal finances, right? Because it doesn't matter how much money you make. You know, I could teach you how to make money all day, and you could next year go out and you could make $1 million with a new business that you started. But if you're also spending $1 million, then at the end of the year, you're left with zero, right? And somebody else who's making, say, $32,000 per year, but they're saving $2,000 per year, well, at the end of the year, that person who's only making $32,000 a year is better off than the person who's making $1 million per year, because they have zero, okay? And so you have to begin saving. Saving your money is important because it gives you more options. It gives you leverage. Let's say that every single week or bi-weekly, whenever you get paid, every single paycheck, you save $100 from your paycheck. So after 10 paychecks, you've saved $1,000. This is $1,000 that you have that you can now use to maybe go invest in the stock market, or perhaps you could save it and put it toward a down payment to finance a rental property, or perhaps you could be saving it up for some other type of income producing asset. That's what I would recommend you do. And of course, we'll talk about investing a little bit later in this video. But the point I'm trying to drive home here is that every single dollar that you save should have a purpose, a designated purpose, and it should be clear. It's just like setting goals for yourself. You should be very clear on exactly what it is that you want to achieve so that you know what steps to take to achieve those goals. And saving money is the same way. Now, I do want to add one minor caveat to that point. The only time it makes sense to save money and store it in your savings account and you know, let it lose value because of inflation, the only time that makes sense is when you're saving up for an emergency fund, which I recommend that everybody watching has some type of emergency fund saved up. An emergency fund is basically money that you set aside for emergencies. Your car breaks down, your AC in your house breaks. Okay, these are emergencies. You lose your job and you need to be able to have something to fall back on while you're trying to look for a new job. This is an emergency. And in those situations, it's much better to have money that you have set aside that you can pull from and use, instead of trying to scramble and maybe taking out personal loans or going and asking family members or friends if they can loan you money. It's so much easier just to have money set aside waiting for you just in case something happens. Now, let me tell you what is not an emergency. Buying a new computer is not an emergency, or buying a new pair of shoes. Those are not emergencies. An emergency is something that if it were to happen to you, it would cause your life to come to a halt. Okay, so for example, the car breaking down, that would cause your life to come to a halt. especially if you depend on that car to get you to work or to get you, to drive your kids to and from school or whatever the case may be. That's an emergency, and that's something that you need to get taken care of immediately. And in that situation, that's where your emergency fund comes into play. The actual fund itself should have at least 3 months worth of living expenses inside of it. So let's say, for example, your cost of living is, I don't know. I live in North Carolina, so cost of living is much lower than it is in like California or something. But let's just say, for example, your cost of living is $2,000 per month. Then ideally, you should have $6,000 within your emergency fund saved up. And you should be good to go with that, okay? Now, if you say to yourself, Joshua, there's no way I can save up that much money. There's just no way. Okay, fine. Save up $1,000 so that if your car breaks down or if something breaks in your house or I don't know, something happens, at least you have money set aside to cover that. Because the last thing you want to do is go out and take out a personal loan or go get your car repaired on some high interest credit card and not pay it off for the next 6 months. And so now you're in credit card debt and you're getting charged interest every single month. Avoid that. So the key takeaway here is that you must start saving your money and saving with a purpose. Start taking money out of each paycheck and putting it toward some type of investment, be it the stock market or money toward financing a rental property or something. Also, start taking money out of each paycheck and putting it toward an emergency fund. I want you to do those two things moving forward. Let's talk about budgeting. Budgeting is such a boring word, and that word alone has probably turned off more people to personal finance than any other word that I can think of. But I want to challenge you for a second here, okay? When you think of that word, budgeting, I don't want you to think of it in the traditional sense, right? Where you have like your boring spreadsheet or some boring app that you're using to track your expenses and to track your income and to try and balance your income. And then you're trying to see if you have money left over for Starbucks at the end of each month. I don't want you to think about budgeting that way. Personally, I believe you shouldn't have to cut out Starbucks from your life, right? I know a lot of finance people would say otherwise, but if that's a simple luxury that you enjoy, you shouldn't have to cut it out. Personally, I believe that you should ultimately work to expand your means so that you can expand your expenses and you can live the life that you want to live, right? Otherwise, why are you living? What's the point of trying to cut out all the things that you enjoy? And then by the end of your life, you were just working for what? Now, when it comes to budgeting, I want you to stop thinking about it as a way to balance your income with your expenses, okay? Stop thinking about it that way. Instead, I want you to think about it the way that the wealthy do, which is budgeting your money as a way to generate more income and expand your means. The first way of budgeting, which is balancing your income with your expenses, is going to keep you poor the rest of your life, guaranteed. The second way will make you wealthy. And there's a reason that the wealthy do it this way. Make no mistake about it. There's a reason wealthy people budget their money the way that I'm going to teach you here in a second, because it works. So there are two critical differences between how a wealthy person budgets their money versus everybody else. So let's talk about that. The first difference is that wealthy people always pay themselves first. Okay, so what exactly does this mean? The moment money hits their account, whether it's through a paycheck or through their business or whatever it is, they immediately take between 10 and 20% of their money and they put it into some type of investment account. This could be a brokerage account where you plan on going and investing in the stock market with that money. This could be some external savings account where they're saving up their money to purchase another perhaps rental property, or they're saving up money to start a business or something. They're saving up their money to purchase some type of income producing asset, right? An investment that's gonna make them money, that's gonna work for them so that they can continue to build their wealth without actually having to work for it. So the moment you get paid, I want you to pay yourself first. Now, maybe you can't move 10 to 20% of your income every single paycheck into an investment account. I understand that. Start small. Maybe you can only do 5% of your income. Okay, that's fine. Start there. But you have to treat this like a bill. Otherwise, you're not going to pay it because you're going to say to yourself, well, I'll just skip this month. Maybe next month I'll invest some money. And, the next thing you know, 10 years has passed and you haven't invested a single dime, And that's 10 years of your life that could have made a massive impact on your future, but you chose to keep pushing it off, okay? So start taking it serious. Your future self depends on you to start investing your money now. So start investing your money. The second difference between how wealthy people budget versus everybody else is that instead of using a traditional budgeting, spreadsheet or template, wealthy people use what's called a personal financial statement. And trust me, it sounds complex, but it's a very simple concept. So this is an example of a personal financial statement, as you can see on the screen. So the first part here shows the income statement, which shows your income, obviously, and your expenses. Now, this is where most budgets stop. However, the wealthy take it one step further. They also want to see an overall picture of their financial standings with a balance sheet. And that's what you see at the bottom here. The balance sheet consists of two parts: assets and liabilities. So let's go ahead and go over this really quick, okay? Let's start with the income column. Any money that flows into your bank account first has to go through the income column on your income statement. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Income could be money from your day job. It could be like portfolio income from stock dividends. It could be any money earned from investments or like passive income from a side hustle, whatever. All of that money is considered income, and that first has to go into the income column on your income statement. And then, of course, your expenses go into the expense column. So things like your bills, groceries, rent, your investing percentage that we talked about earlier, all of that goes into the expenses column on your income statement. So that's pretty standard, and that's where most budgets stop. But the way wealthy people budget is they take it a step further. So next you'll go to your balance sheet, and in the assets column, I want you to enter in anything that puts money into your pockets. For example, if you own dividend paying stocks or rental properties or any type of income producing asset, these go into the asset column. Now, I don't want you to feel bad about this, okay? Because most people are not gonna have anything to put into the assets column on their balance sheet, but that's the point of doing a balance sheet, is it gives you an overall broad picture of your financial situation, right? Now you can visually see that you have nothing working for you to help you build wealth, to help set you up for financial independence. You've brought awareness to yourself. In the liabilities column, enter in everything that's taking money out of your pockets, right? This includes things like your mortgage, your car, okay? Now, I know I just messed up a few people here by saying that your mortgage is a liability, but it is. Contrary to popular belief, your mortgage is not an asset. Assets are things that put money into your pocket. Your mortgage is taking money out of your pocket. Therefore, your mortgage is a liability, just like your car. Even if you pay your car off, your car is still a liability, because every single month, what do you have to do? You have to pay your insurance, you have to pay for gas, you have to pay for repairs. Those are all things that are taking money out of your pockets. Therefore, it is a liability. And your mortgage is the same way. Now, unless you live in a duplex or something and you're house hacking and like you're living on one side of the duplex and you have somebody else renting out the other side and they're paying for the mortgage. In that situation, yes, you can definitely put your house as an asset, because it is now putting money into your pocket, because you're not having to pay anything for your mortgage because your tenant is paying the mortgage for you with their rent. At that point, your mortgage does become an asset. But for the rest of us who live in single family homes, like myself, this is a liability. My mortgage is a liability because it's taking money out of my pocket every single month. And this is why a balance sheet is so important, because it helps to put things into perspective. If all you own are liabilities, you're gonna have a really, really hard time building wealth, because everything that you own in life is taking money away from you, because you have nothing in your assets column and your liabilities column is jam-packed. And you have to start shifting that. You have to start putting more items into your assets column and removing items from your liabilities column. So the key takeaway is this: budget your money to build wealth, not to balance your income and expenses, okay? That's the most important part. Next, save your money to buy more assets. And then eventually you can use your income from your assets to buy your liabilities, things like your car or a house or a boat or whatever you want, right? That's what wealthy people do. Wealthy people are not making money to go and buy a car or to go and buy a house. They're making money to go buy investments, and then their investments, their assets make them money, and they use the money that they made from their assets to go buy their liabilities, right? That's the difference here. And so I want you to reframe your mind. I want you to rethink the way that you see money and that you use money in your life. And I promise you, I guarantee you, you'll start seeing results. All right, so let's transition now into investing. So investing is one of those things in personal finance that seems so scary. It seems so intimidating, but honestly, it's probably one of the easiest things to do in personal finance. And I mean that when I say it. It sounds crazy, but I'm being honest. For starters, let's talk about some of the different types of investments out there, or at least some of the more common ones. And then after that, we'll transition and we'll talk about the different types of investment accounts that you can open, We'll talk about the best brokers, and then we'll talk about how you can begin investing yourself. Okay, so in terms of types of investments, there's a lot of different stuff out there. You've got stocks, bonds, mutual funds, index funds, ETFs, options, annuities, CDs, cryptocurrency, real estate, and then you've got your alternative investments like commodities, art, precious metals, collectibles, and things like that. Now, I know that's a lot to consider. We're definitely not going to go over each one of these because it would make this video like 10 times longer than it already is. We're just going to talk about the ones that you'll most likely invest in within your lifetime. And these include stocks, bonds, index funds, ETFs, real estate, and maybe cryptocurrency depending on your risk tolerance. Okay, so let's quickly go over each of these and kind of just discuss what they are. So stocks are basically fractions of a company. You can think of stocks as pieces of a company. When you own a share of a stock in a company, you are technically a part owner in that company. So for example, let's say that you bought a share of Apple, so you now own one share of Apple. Well, you now quite literally own a piece of Apple. Next up, bonds. So bonds are essentially just loans that you give to corporations and governments in exchange for interest, okay? So governments will typically issue bonds if they're trying to raise money for various projects or even just like day-to-day operations. And the same is true with corporations. Now, for corporations specifically, what I'm going to say here is not true for governments, but for corporations, they'll often issue bonds as a way to raise money instead of giving up ownership of the company by issuing shares of stock, right? Because when a corporation issues shares of stock to sell to shareholders, they're giving up part ownership of their company to the shareholders, right? So issuing bonds is just a way for corporations to avoid having to give up even more ownership of their company by issuing shares of stock. Index funds and exchange traded funds, or ETFs, are both types of investment funds. Now, an investment fund is basically just a basket of stocks or bonds that you can buy to invest in a large number of securities at once. So for example, okay, instead of investing in a single stock, we'll say Apple, right? Instead of investing in a single share of Apple where you're only benefiting from one share of Apple stock, you can go and purchase a single share of an ETF that invests in thousands of different stocks. And by buying a single share of that ETF, you're giving your portfolio exposure to thousands of different companies: Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, Coca-Cola. I mean, these massive brands, right? All by investing in a single ETF. So that's the benefit of investment funds. Investment funds are personally my favorite way of investing in the stock market. I've also got a ton of videos on this channel where I talk about the best ETFs, how to invest in ETFs for beginners and things like that. I'll try to remember to link those in the description below. So next up is real estate. I think that you know what real estate is. You're probably sitting in a piece of real estate right now. But in terms of investing in real estate, there's a number of different ways you can do it. The most common ways would be probably buying rental properties, right? Properties that you purchase specifically for the case of renting them out to tenants who then pay you rent each month, okay? Or you could buy real estate investment trusts, or REITs. And REITs are basically, I like to think of them as just ETFs that only invest in real estate. And so basically when you purchase a share of a REIT, you're essentially investing in all of the real estate that REIT owns, okay? So you can actually invest in real estate without having to go out and finance and manage physical real estate. So REITs are a really powerful way to invest in real estate if you don't want to actually have to do the work to go and buy physical real estate yourself. And finally, we've got cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrency is a relatively new asset class, and the most widely known cryptocurrency is Bitcoin. Now, cryptocurrency is highly volatile and very risky, and I would only recommend that you get into it if you have really high risk tolerance. So those are basically the most common types of investments out there. So I hope that part helped you. Now I want to transition and I want to actually talk about the different types of investment accounts, right? Because there are different types of investment accounts, ways that you can invest your money. If you want to begin investing, you can't just go to your bank account and start investing within your bank account. There is a special account that's required to actually purchase securities. Securities are just like stocks and bonds and things like that. There's a special account that's required in order to buy those assets, and that account is a brokerage account. So there's actually 4 common types of brokerage accounts, or like investment accounts. And as you can see on the screen here, you've got the standard brokerage account. This can also just be called the individual investment account. You've got retirement accounts. you've got education accounts, and then you've got custodial accounts. A standard brokerage account is probably the most common type of brokerage account. It's just a basic account that an individual can open to invest in securities like stocks, bonds, REITs, ETFs, things like that. These accounts are taxable, which means that the money you make with your investments inside of the account is taxed by the government. Next up, you've got retirement accounts or individual retirement accounts, also known as the IRA. And this is essentially just a standard brokerage account, except it comes with tax benefits, okay? And these types of accounts are specifically used for retirement purposes only, which is why they come with the tax benefits. A couple of popular retirement accounts include the Roth IRA and the 401k. You've probably heard of both these before. So both of these accounts come with different types of tax benefits. For example, the Roth IRA is a type of retirement account where the money that you put into the account, the money that's going into the account, has already been taxed, which means all the money that you make over the years, all of the capital appreciation from your investments within that account that you accumulate over the years, and the withdrawals that you start making once you retire from that account are not taxed, okay? And this is why the Roth IRA is such a popular investment or retirement account. Next up, you've got the 401k. 401k is kind of the exact opposite of the Roth IRA. All the money that is going into the 401k retirement account is not taxed, but all the money that you withdraw once you retire is taxed as ordinary income. Next up are education accounts, and these are a type of investment account that's used for educational expenses, right? So a couple of common educational accounts include the 529 plan and ESAs, or educational savings plans. Now, these are basically just standard brokerage accounts, except the money that is going into this account has to be used for educational purposes only. And lastly, you've got custodial accounts, which are investment accounts for minors. And a minor is somebody who's under the age of 18 and sometimes 21, depending on the state that you live in. Custodial accounts are essentially just a standard brokerage account, except for minors. You can still invest in stocks, you can still invest in bonds and ETFs and other securities, except you're doing it on behalf of a minor. And then once that minor reaches a certain age, typically between the age of 18 and 25, depending on your state, that account is then turned over to them and they can use the money in the account for whatever purpose they choose, okay? You have no control over that because it is now their account. So those are all of the most common types of investment accounts. I would say that the two most common ones between those four are the standard brokerage account and some type of investment account. Now, I do want to mention that with a standard brokerage account, there is no limit to how many of these you can open up, right? It's just like a bank account. You could have 1,000 bank accounts if you wanted to, right? And the same is true with a brokerage account. There is no limit to that. With retirement accounts, you're only allowed to have one per type of retirement account. So for example, you can only have one Roth IRA per person. You can only have one 401k. But you can have one of each. So you can have a 401k, but also have a Roth IRA and then get double the tax benefits on your income. So that's something to consider if you want to save for retirement and really take advantage of the tax benefits of those accounts. So now I'd like to transition and talk about the best brokers that you can use to open up an investment account with. Now, the investment account could be some type of retirement account like a Roth IRA, or it could just be a standard brokerage account, whatever you choose. These are going to be the best brokers, in my opinion, to do so. On the screen now, you should see a list of some of the best brokers here in the US. Now, in no specific order, they include Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, M1 Finance, and Webull. Now, there are probably over 100 different broker options to choose from here in the US, but in my opinion, these ones that I've listed are some of the best, okay? So I've got links to all of these brokers down in the description below. If you want to earn some free stocks, okay, completely free stocks, I've got a link in the description that you can use to open up a Webull account. And if you make the minimum deposit, which I think is like $100 or something, then you'll earn a couple of free stocks, I think valued up to $1,800 or something like that. You just make the deposit, you get the free stocks, and if you wanted to, you could close the account and then move your money somewhere else. It's up to you, but it's free stocks, so you might as well. Anyways, these are all amazing brokers and they all come with different pros and cons. I'm not gonna go over each one and talk about the pros and cons of each one. That would make this video so much longer. But of course, if you have any questions about any of these brokers or really anything that we've gone over so far in the video, just drop a comment below. I'll do my best to answer it as quickly as possible. Okay, so how do you actually go about opening up an investment account? The process can seem slightly scary at first, but I promise it is not hard. I mean, the entire process is first of all free, but also it takes like 5 to 10 minutes to do. And it's super easy. If you've ever opened up a bank account online, then it's pretty much that, except it's just a brokerage account, okay? So first of all, you're gonna wanna choose your broker. So let's just say, for example, you went with Webull because you wanna get those free stocks. So you go with Webull. Webull is gonna ask you for your social security number, your name, your address, your employment status, your salary, like how much money you make each year, your income. They're gonna ask you all of these basic questions, the same questions that a bank asks you when you're opening up a bank account, okay? Your brokerage account is gonna ask you the same questions. And then once you finish the application process, which takes like 5 to 10 minutes, you're gonna have to connect your bank account with your brokerage account. And you have to do this because you have to have a way to transfer money into your brokerage account so that you can then begin investing it, right? Every single time that you want to invest more money, you have to transfer money from your bank account to your brokerage account so that you can then go and use that money to buy stocks and bonds and other types of securities. But that's really about it. You know, for the most part, every broker is going to be the exact same. They're going to have the same process, the application, connect your bank account, deposit money, start investing, right? I think you'll find that the process is very streamlined and easy once you just start doing it. Next part, making money. Everybody knows how to make money, right? You go to any business in your town, you apply for a job, you get the job, and then you trade your time for money. It's a very simple, straightforward transaction, and everybody knows how to do that, okay? But I'm willing to guess that if you're watching this video, that you don't want to make money that way, right? You've been doing it that way for a long time now, and it's not really working out for you. You're still not making enough money. You want to make more money than what you're currently making now. You have dreams. You have goals that you're trying to accomplish. That's the reason why you're watching this video right now, is because you want to learn how to become better with your finances so that you can achieve those goals and you can live out those dreams. Instead of just thinking about them in your head, you can actually live them out in color in real life. I know this already. That's why you're watching the video right now. But in order for you to become financially independent, you have to stop working for other people. You have to understand that if you're working for somebody else, it's going to be extremely difficult for you to achieve your financial goals, okay? Not impossible, definitely not impossible, because it can still happen, but it's gonna take you a lot longer to do so than if you were to go and start something for yourself and make more money than you thought was even possible. I want you to hear me out for just a second here. Becoming a millionaire is not difficult. It's actually super easy. All you have to do is just invest a few $100s each month into a low-cost ETF inside of a Roth IRA, and then after 30 to 40 years of doing this, you'll become a millionaire. It's truly that simple, okay? The math is already there. But I'm willing to guess that you want to become wealthy sooner so that you can spend your life enjoying your wealth instead of waiting until you're much older and then becoming wealthy and not being able to enjoy your wealth as much as if you were younger. Now, there's nothing wrong, by the way, there's nothing wrong with the latter of waiting until you're much older, like retirement age, before you start enjoying your wealth. Most Americans do not have that luxury. So even that is fantastic. But my guess is that you're watching this right now and you want to become wealthy sooner. And the only way to do that is by working for yourself. I don't care what anybody else tells you. Unless you're like top 1% in corporate America, like the CEO of some big Fortune 500 company where you're making a couple $1 million per year. Other than that, you will never become wealthy working for somebody else. You have to do something for yourself. Another way of saying this is to start a business, but that sounds a little bit more scary, and so we'll just stick with starting something for yourself, okay? But it's the same exact thing. Now, I'm not gonna get into like the exact intricate details of how to start a business or how to start something for yourself in this video because it would take too long, but I just want to make it a point that if you have a desire to build wealth while you're young, then starting a business or even some type of side hustle, which could potentially turn into a business, is a very promising way to do so. Because other than that, you're going to have to invest your way to becoming a millionaire. And that takes time. That takes years and years of compounding growth. And by the way, starting a business does not mean that you have to go and like open up a brick and mortar store. Starting a YouTube channel is a business. Building a blog online, starting a website and writing blog posts and getting traffic into your website and putting ads on your website and collecting affiliate income and things like that, That's a business. I don't want you to think of a business as like, having to go and write a business plan and going and leasing out office space and all this expensive stuff. It doesn't have to be that complex. I've actually got a couple of videos on my channel where I talk about these things a little bit more in detail and I give you some ideas. So for example, I've got a video called The Best Side Hustle Ideas. I'll link that below. I've got a video on the best business ideas that you can start for under $100. I'll link that down below also. Making money is a huge part of personal finances because if you aren't making money, then you can't save money. And if you aren't saving money, then you can't invest money. And if you're not investing money, then you can't increase your income and build your wealth. So it's just this repeating cycle. Let's transition now into credit, and specifically credit scores, what factors determine your score, and how you can build your score from nothing if you have no established credit whatsoever, or if you have a bad credit score, how you can build it up again to a good credit score. As much as people like Dave Ramsey like to preach against the idea of credit and credit scores, here in America, it's inevitable. You need to have a good credit score if you ever want to take advantage of all of the various lending options here in America, such as mortgages and loans and credit cards. All things that if used responsibly can really add value to your life. And honestly, even beyond just having a good credit score for the sake of opening up a credit card or something, a good credit score can also be the deciding factor of something as simple as you renting an apartment. Like a lot of apartment complexes will look at your credit score, and if you have no established credit or if you have bad credit, then they'll turn you away. Also, believe it or not, some employers will also turn you away from a job if you have bad credit, because it's a sign that you're not responsible in a certain area of your life, specifically with your finances. And so the way that the employer sees it is that that is going to translate into other areas of your life as well. For example, you not being responsible with your work. And so a lot of employers will look at your credit score and determine if they want to hire you based off of your credit score. Now, I know that sounds a bit extreme, but that's just the way it is. Fortunately, with just a little bit of common sense and a little bit of practicality, you'll be able to build up your score to a 700 plus and then eventually even join the 800 plus club. So on a very basic level, there are two types of credit scores that are used by lenders. You've got your FICO score and then you've got your Vantage score. The FICO score is probably the most popular one. In fact, it's used by over 90% of lenders to make their decisions about whether they want to give you a loan or a credit card or something like that. So the FICO score is the one that we're going to focus on specifically in this video, but just understand that the Vantage score is another type of score that can be used to determine whether you get a loan or are approved for a credit card or whatever the case may be. I've listed a graphic here on the screen, as you can see, and it's going to show you basically a graph of the FICO score range. So you can see here that the FICO score ranges between 300, a low of 300, and a high of 850. So the higher your score, the better off you are. So your goal should be to get to the 800 plus club. Once you're above an 800 credit score, it basically just means that you're invincible and nobody can touch you, okay? Like no credit card company is going to turn you away for anything. And that may either be a good thing or a bad thing, I guess, depending on your spending habits and how responsible you are. But my guess is that if you reach an 800 plus credit score, then you're probably a pretty responsible person and you're not going to do anything crazy with your good credit score. When it comes to your credit score, there are 5 factors that determine the score. Okay, so if you have, say, a 750 credit score, there's 5 factors that go into deciding that your score is 750. They are your payment history, the total amount owed. This can also be called your credit utilization. Number 3 is the length of credit history. 4, the types of credit that you have open. And number 5, the new credit that you have opened up. This can also be referred to as hard inquiries. Now, all these factors are not created equal. What I mean by that is some factors are going to have more of an impact on your credit score than others. Now, in terms of how important each factor is, I've got them up on the screen here for you to see. You can see here that your payment history, specifically for the FICO score, the Vantage score is weighed a little bit different, but since we know that the FICO score is used by 90% of lenders, that's the one that we're going to focus on. But your payment history makes up 35% of your credit score. That's almost a third of the credit score, and we still have 4 other factors to go over, okay? So the payment history is by far the most important factor, and this is the one that you really need to focus on. You have to make sure that you're paying your bills on time, okay? If you're missing credit card payments or you're missing loan payments, or even if you're missing utility bill payments, these are all going to have a negative impact on your payment history. And that, of course, in turn is going to decrease your credit score. Ideally, you want to have a 100% payment history, but anything above a 90 is considered good. Next up is the total amount owed. This is also called, like I said, your credit utilization, and this makes up 30% of your FICO credit score, right? So still a really high number. Between these two factors, we're talking about 65% of your score being made up with these two factors right here, okay? So I really want to focus in and hone in on these two and make sure that you get these two right. So your credit utilization, or the total amount owed, is the amount of credit that you are currently using. Ideally, you want to try and keep this below 10%, because if you start utilizing more of your credit, it's going to have a negative impact on your credit score. So keep this number below 10%. So for example, let's say that you have a credit card with a line of credit of $1,000. This means that you cannot spend over $100 on that credit card, because $100 is 10% of $1,000. If you go and you buy a new flat screen TV for $500 and you carry that balance with you for a few months, well, that means your credit utilization is going to be above a 50%. And that's going to have a really, really negative impact on your credit score, because it just doesn't look good to lenders, okay? So make sure that you keep that number below 10%. Now, I've actually got a trick that you can use to lower your credit utilization so that you can spend more on your credit card without negatively impacting your credit score. We'll talk about that in just a minute. I just want to get through these 5 factors first, okay? So the next factor is the length of your credit history, and this one makes up 15% of your credit score, and it's basically just a combined average of how long you've had all of your credit accounts open for. So you can improve your credit score over time by keeping your credit accounts open and in good standing. Generally speaking, credit accounts under the age of 2, meaning that within the past 2 years you open up that account, will have a negative impact on your credit score. Typically, credit accounts over the age of 7 will have a positive impact on your credit score. The longer you leave your credit accounts open, the better off you are. The next factor that determines your credit score is the types of credit. This can also be called just the total accounts. As weird as this sounds, the more credit files you have open, the better, right? So let's say, for example, you only have one single credit card and that's it. You don't have anything else open within your credit file. Well, that's actually not going to have a positive impact on your credit score. I mean, it's not going to like brutally mess up your credit score, but it's not going to have a positive impact on your credit score. Compare that to somebody who has, say, 5 different lines of credit. The person who has 5 lines of credit will experience a positive impact on their credit score compared to the person who just has 1. In the world of credit, the more lines of credit you can have, the better you look, because to the lender, it seems like you're a responsible person, because you're able to manage all of these credit accounts responsibly without like going into debt. And lastly, new lines of credit. This can also be called hard inquiries. This makes up 10% of your score. So basically, every time you apply for a credit card, the lender checks your credit report, your credit history, and that creates a hard inquiry on your credit file. Every single time that happens, it's going to have a negative impact on your credit score. These do go away over time. They stay on your credit history for 2 years, but after about 6 months to a year, they start having less of an impact on your credit score. But it's still not recommended that you get too many of them at once, because applying for too many credit cards or for too many loans at once is going to cause multiple hard inquiries to hit your credit report, which of course is going to drag your score down significantly. So it's not recommended that you apply for too many cards at once. All right. So now that you have a fundamental understanding of what credit is and how your score is calculated, I think it's really important that we talk about how you can improve your credit score, increase it, and maintain a good credit score. So by far, the most important thing to building good credit and maintaining good credit is to pay your bills on time consistently. You want to try and have a 100% payment history. And ideally, anything above 90% is good, but you want to have 100%. If you're dropping below 90%, if you're not paying your bills on time, then it's really going to have a negative impact on your credit score, and it's just not going to look good to lenders. Next, you want to try to increase your credit line as much as possible. Do you recall earlier when I said that I had a trick to lowering your credit utilization? Well, this is the trick right here. For example, let's say that you have one credit card and that credit card has a $1,000 line of credit. Well, if you go and you spend $100 on that credit card, well, you've already hit your 10% utilization, okay? And anything past that is going to have a negative impact on your credit score. But let's say, for example, instead, you have a credit card with a $10,000 line of credit. Well, now spending $100 is not going to make you reach that 10% utilization. So instead, you can now spend $100 and you'll only have a 1% credit utilization, which is not going to have any impact on your credit score. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is the higher your credit line, the higher your combined credit line for all of your accounts, the lower your credit utilization will be when you go and spend money. The trick here is to either try and increase your line of credit for that specific credit card. It could just be one, it could be a couple of them. Or the next trick would be to open up a new credit card, which would come with its own line of credit, but that line of credit would be combined with your total line of credit for all of your accounts. And by doing that, you're increasing your total line of credit, which is going to lower your credit utilization. And finally, the best tip I have for building up your credit is to try and not close old credit card accounts. Even if you aren't using the credit card, it's recommended that you still do not close the account, because more likely than not, if you close it, it's going to have a negative impact on your credit score for two reasons. The first reason is that it's going to decrease your credit history, or the age of your credit account rather. So for example, if you have two credit cards, one credit card you've had for 5 years and the other credit card you've had only for a year. If you close the old credit card, which you've had for 5 years, then your average age of your credit is going to drop drastically. So not only is it going to affect the age of your credit history, but it's also going to have a negative impact on your credit utilization. So for example, let's say that 5-year credit card that you just closed had a credit limit or a line of credit of $5,000, but your new credit card only has a line of credit of $1,000. So between those two cards, your total combined credit is $6,000, right? $1,000 from the new credit card, $5,000 from the old credit card. But if you close the old credit card, well, that's going to decrease your total line of credit for all of your accounts total. So the moral of the story is this: by closing even just one old credit card, your credit score can really take a beating. So the trick is just to keep old credit cards open for as long as possible for the rest of your life if you can. Now that we've talked about credit scores, I want to now transition to talk about credit cards. Credit cards are by far my favorite way of paying for things. I literally pay for everything with a credit card. If I could, if my bank would let me, I would even pay my mortgage with a credit card and just load up on a ton of rewards. I mean, why not? It's not like I'm carrying my balances over from month to month, and so I'm paying interest to the credit card company. I'm not doing that. I'm paying off my balances in full each month, and so I'm literally paying credit card companies $0 and 0 cents. They're making no money off of me because I'm paying my balances in full each month. And that's actually the first thing that I want to talk to you about in regards to credit cards, is how not to get into credit card debt, right? We'll also talk about the types of credit cards that you can get and how to choose the right card for you. But most importantly, first and foremost, let's talk about how you can avoid credit card debt, okay? Because I think most people have this idea that if you're using a credit card, it automatically means that you're somehow in debt, right? Because their parents were in credit card debt and all of their friends are in credit card debt, and everybody around them is somehow in credit card debt because they're not responsible with their credit card. And so now they're afraid because they think that credit cards are evil. And then you've got people like Dave Ramsey who are reinforcing this idea that credit cards are evil, when in all actuality, if you can just use them responsibly, they can be really, really valuable tools in your financial arsenal. So yes, credit cards are very powerful tools, but with great power also comes great responsibility, as the old saying goes, okay? If you want to avoid credit card debt, I literally have the secret to doing so. This is, if you just do this one thing, you will never, ever be in credit card debt, ever, okay? One thing. And that one thing is never buy anything with a credit card that you cannot afford to pay off in full at that moment. Okay, what do I mean by that? So say you see a new TV in Best Buy, a new amazing flat screen TV for $700, and you think to yourself, well, I'm getting paid at the end of the month, and like, I can just go ahead and buy this TV now. Stop. Do not buy the TV with your credit card, because you don't have the money at that moment to pay for the TV, right? What if an emergency pops up? What if your car breaks down and your money that you were going to use to pay off your credit card, it now has to go to fixing your car, right? Think about that for a second. So never buy anything that you cannot afford to pay off immediately, okay? I promise you, if you can just do that, then you'll avoid more headaches, and possibly even more heartaches than you can imagine. So let's talk about the types of credit cards that are available out there, and then we'll talk about which ones will work best for you based off of your lifestyle, your spending habits, and your credit score. So on the screen, you'll see all the different types of credit cards that are available. You've got, standard unsecured credit cards, secured credit cards, student credit cards, business credit cards, store credit cards, and then my least favorite type of credit card is the charge card. Okay, so let's just go down the list here and talk about each one. So the unsecured credit card is your standard card. They don't require you to make a security deposit. You can open one up, you can be approved for a certain line of credit, and then you can start using that credit as soon as you get the card. Now, some of the best unsecured credit cards will typically require you to have a higher credit score, okay? And these cards also typically come with much better rewards and perks. Next up, we've got secured credit cards, and these are primarily used if you have no established credit at all, or if you have bad credit. When I first started building my credit, I opened up a secured credit card, and that's what I did to start off building my credit before I then transitioned and got an unsecured credit card. Now, secured credit cards are considered secure because they require you to make a cash deposit before being approved for the card. So say, for example, you opened up a secured credit card and you deposited $100 into your account. Well, that means that your line of credit is $100. That is the most you can spend on that credit card is $100. Now, this is obviously different from an unsecured credit card, which does not require you to make a cash deposit. But with secured credit cards, since you have no credit or since your credit is bad, then the bank or the lender wants to see that you can deposit the money into the account before they actually give you a line of credit for that card. Next up, you've got student credit cards, and these are obviously used by students. Most of these cards are only accepted if you go to some type of school or college or something, and you have to have proof that you go to school or college, and these cards are designed to help students build up their credit. Some student credit cards are unsecured. You can apply for them without having to make a security deposit, while others are secured. Next up, we've got business cards, which, as the name implies, are for business owners. Now, these are pretty much your standard unsecured credit card. The only difference with a business credit card is that they give you the option to add employees to your credit account, right? So if you wanted your employees to have their own company credit card, then you would want to have a business credit card because it gives you the option to add multiple employees to your credit card account. Next up, we got store credit cards. You probably know what these are because every single time you go to the store, the cashier, the clerk is saying to you, if you apply for this card today, then you'll save 15% on your purchase for today only. Personally, I would advise that you just avoid these altogether. The only real benefit that you get from them is when you first open up the card and they give you that initial discount. But other than that, they typically don't come with any type of rewards. You'd be better off going with an unsecured credit card, which typically do come with rewards or at least some type of perk that is going to provide you with some type of value. Whereas with the store credit card, you're not getting that. And then last, my least favorite, you got charge cards. Now, this is a type of credit card that requires you to pay your monthly balance in full at the end of each month. Now, inherently, this is not a bad idea, right? Because it forces you to pay off your credit card balance in full at the end of the month instead of carrying a balance over from month to month and paying interest on that balance. The one thing I don't like about a charge card, though, is that they usually never come with any type of benefits. And so if you have the option to go with a regular credit card versus a charge card, I personally would always go for the regular credit card, especially if it has benefits and rewards such as cash back and other perks that are going to add value to my life. So which of these is best for you? Well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, right? If you have average to great credit, then you probably just want to go with a regular unsecured credit card, preferably one that's going to come with rewards. And there's plenty of great ones out there, okay? If you have bad credit or you have no established credit at all, then you really don't have any option. You're going to have to go with a secured credit card and make that initial deposit into the account before you can actually start using the card. That's what I did. That's what a lot of people do. If you're just starting out or if you have bad credit, that's just what you have to do, okay? Fortunately, it shouldn't take you a long time to start building up your credit again so that you can then transition into an unsecured credit card and you can start feeling like, an adult again. Additionally, if you're a student and you have no established credit, then you do have the option as well to go with a student card. These could be good because some student cards are unsecured, which means you don't have to make an initial deposit. And I know when you're in college, you don't really have that much money. And so you're not really interested in making a deposit into an account just to get a credit card. Like you would rather just go and spend that money somewhere else. And so some student cards are unsecured, which is a really great idea. If you're a business owner who has employees and you want those employees to have a business card that they can use for business purchases, then obviously going with a business card would make a lot of sense for you. Yeah, that's about it. I wouldn't go with store credit cards, and I would avoid charge cards as well. Next up, let's talk about bank accounts. Now, this is a topic that seems so juvenile, right? Like bank accounts. What do you mean? That's the most basic thing in the world of finance. But I'm convinced that a lot of people, a lot of Americans still don't know how to properly use all of the different types of bank accounts out there. And if you're brand new to the world of finance, then you might not know much about it at all. And so I think that this is a really important topic to discuss when it comes to personal finance. So on a very basic level, there are two types of bank accounts. You've got your checking account and your savings account. So a checking account is likely where your paycheck gets deposited into. It's probably where you pay your bills from. You can think of your checking account as sort of the highway, the freeway. It's a place to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible, right? With a checking account, you have quick access to your money. But here's the deal. You should never be keeping large sums of money in your checking account because this account is not designed for saving money. It's designed for sending and receiving money, and that's it. Now, next up, we have a savings account. And of course, as the name implies, this is a bank account that's designed to save money. It's a good place to put money away that you don't need right away, but you still want access to it if you need it quickly. Many people believe that there is just one type of savings account, but there are actually a few different types. You got your traditional account, you've got your high yield savings account, you've got your money market account, and then finally you got your certificate of deposit. So traditional savings accounts are my least favorite. The interest paid on your money in these accounts are typically so low that you're actually losing money due to inflation every single year. Additionally, a CD or a certificate of deposit is probably one of the worst places to put your money because the interest rates on those things are so depressingly low that once again, you're losing money due to inflation every single year. And to make matters even worse, your money is actually locked away into the account until the CD matures, which is typically between like a few months up to a few years, depending on which type of CD that you go with. Next up are my two favorite types of savings accounts, and they are the high yield savings account and then the money market account. Okay, so for starters, the high yield account, as the name implies, is a type of savings account that gives you higher interest rates on your savings. You could also choose to go with a money market account. So this is a type of savings account that has some checking account features. So for example, many money market accounts will also come with debit cards and checkbooks, right? These are things that only come with checking accounts. You cannot get a debit card on a savings account. But with a money market account, you get the high interest, right? It's typically much higher than the traditional savings interest rate, but it's not as high as the high yield savings interest rate. But if you want those added features, such as a debit card for your account or a checkbook, and you still want relatively high interest rates on your savings, then I would definitely consider going with a money market account. So if you're brand new to the world of banks, which bank account should you go with? First things first, you need a checking account, okay? Everybody needs a checking account. It's basically the launch pad for your money. It's how money enters your bank account, and it's how money exits your bank account in most cases, okay? Also, you're gonna need the debit card, and you cannot get a debit card if you do not have a checking account. Now, I personally never ever use my debit card unless I have to, right? Because some services, such as like your utility bill, for example, you cannot use a credit card to pay for your utilities. You have to use a debit card, or you have to connect your bank directly. And so in those situations, those are the only times that I use a debit card. Otherwise, I'm using a credit card, but you can only get a debit card if you have a checking account, and so you have to open one up. Next, you should definitely open up a savings account. I would recommend that you open up either a high yield savings account or a money market account, because the interest rates on those two accounts are going to be drastically higher than that of a traditional savings account. But you still need a place to store your money for like emergencies, or if you have some type of like short-term goals, such as like saving up money for a mortgage or down payment on a car. You want to have a place to store your money that's going to give you a little bit of interest, but it's not as risky as like the stock market or something like that. Okay, so you should definitely open up a savings account as well. So we are approaching the end here, and I saved the worst part for last. Taxes, okay? Taxes are unavoidable. Nobody can avoid paying taxes unless you want to go to prison. I am not a tax expert, and I don't pretend to be one. So I'm not going to go and talk to you about all the complex tax laws and all the IRS forms that you're required to fill out every single year. I just want to talk to you about the different types of taxes that you can expect to pay in your life, because I think it's important to know that. I want to talk to you about tax brackets, and then I'll talk to you about how you can easily fill out your tax returns each year for free. Okay, so for starters, let's take a look at all the different ways that your money is stolen from you. Taxed. As you can see on the screen here, there are a lot of different ways. So on a very broad level, there's 3 different types of tax groups, right? But under each of these categories, there are dozens of other taxes. Anytime money is transacted from one party to another, more likely than not, it is being taxed somehow. When you buy groceries, in addition to paying for the groceries, you're also paying a sales tax unless you live in a state where there is no sales tax. Every time you get paid, like from your salary or whatever the case may be, the federal government, the state government, and your local municipal government is taking money from you in the form of income tax. Every single time you sell something, you are paying taxes. Typically, this is like a capital gains tax, but there are other types of taxes as well. If you own a house or a car or land, then you are paying taxes on your property every single year. As the famous saying goes, there's 2 things in life that are certain: taxes and ice cream machines at McDonald's never working. Tax brackets. What is it and how do they work? Okay, so here in the United States, depending on your income level, the federal government will tax your income at a different rate. These numbers literally change every single year. And so I'm not going to spend too much time going over the exact tax rate percentages and the numbers and things like that, because they change all the time. The most important thing to understand, though, about tax brackets is that the higher your income, the more you can expect to pay in taxes. Additionally, these numbers may change depending on your status. So for example, if you're married or if you're filing as head of the household, then the numbers will change depending on those filing statuses. Let's talk about filing taxes. This can be a very intimidating topic for a lot of people, but I promise you nowadays, because of the advancements in technology and all of the different free software out there like TurboTax, H&R Block, and Credit Karma, filing your taxes nowadays is so much easier than what it was like 20 years ago. Now, as I mentioned, a lot of these services are completely free to use. If you have a simple like W-2 that you just have to file to the IRS, then you can use these services totally free, and they will automate the entire process for you 100%. I know services like TurboTax, and I know H&R Block is probably the same way, and I'm sure Credit Karma is the same way, will require you to upgrade to a paid plan if you have a more complex return, okay? Typically, these paid plans are still highly affordable. I do want to add that when you get to a point where you're making a lot of money and you have a very complex financial situation, perhaps you own a business or you own like rental properties or things that are making you money outside of your W-2 job, then it is going to be critical that you hire a CPA. There are just way too many tax laws that, if broken, even by accident, can get you into a ton of trouble. And so it's just not worth taking the risk to not hire a CPA just to save a few extra $100. Hire a CPA. If you're making a lot of money as it is already, it's worth the investment. That's it. You made it to the end of the video. My God, if you're still watching right now, if you seriously just went through and you watched that whole video, I have a really good feeling that you're probably going to be very successful financially, especially if you can begin practicing and implementing all the things that we talked about in this video today. If you stayed and watched till the end and you have yet to drop a like on the video and you have yet to subscribe to the channel, please do me a huge favor and do both those things. It would mean the world to me. If you like content like this anyways, and you felt like you got a lot of value from the video, subscribe, come back for more. I appreciate you guys so much for watching. And as always, I will see you again very soon. All right, take care.